I am still seriously miserable. I thought it would get better when I'm away from my wayward wife. I took a 1 week hunting trip with my friends to get away from her. We rented a cabin near Grey Clef French in Bozeman, Montana to get my mind off my wayward wife's affair. I found out a few months ago that my wife had an account on Ashley Madison. I have seen text messages on her phone that made me suspect that she was searching for friends with benefits. When I confronted her, she lied to me that she was only talking with them and didn't have any physical affair. I suspected that she was lying, but couldn't find any proof. After some investigative work, I later found out that she had been involved in orgies and threesomes multiple times. Some of the messages I read are so traumatic that it still burns through my head and damaging self-esteem issues. Most especially when I read a message where I found her talking to someone about how this other guy is so rough and she loves it. She then tries to recruit him for a threesome, which he backs out of, but tried to convince her to do one-on-one. She then says, "No thanks, you are too gentle. If I wanted that, I would F my husband." I know it's shocking, but that is just the tip of the knife. There are more, and the worst part is that she gaslighted me and tried to cover it, but she wasn't good with technology, so I was able to expose her. I really have no one to talk to about this. This is why I'm sharing it here. I am on a hunting trip with some of my closest friends, but I still feel alone. I don't want to share my story with them because it is extremely embarrassing. How am I going to share to people that my wife had been having an affair for months with multiple men? Here is my backstory. I am 44 and she's 41. We have been together for 16 years and we have a 13-year-old son. We married 11 years ago and are successful in our careers. About 3 months ago, around mid-November, my wife was involved in a horrific vehicle accident which almost cost her her life. She was driving through an icy day. She was on her way to work. While she was driving through the deck of a bridge, her SUV slipped on black ice. She lost control of the wheel and her car flipped and skidded down the deck. The impact was stopped by the hangar of the bridge. She hit her head and didn't remember getting out of the vehicle. She sustained minor head injuries, but beside that, she was walking and acting normal. The ambulance took her to the hospital for precautionary purpose. I went to see her at the hospital and she had an MRI done. When the results came out, the doctor said that there weren't any obvious signs of brain injury. However, it was quite traumatic for her, and she was in tears every time she had to drive on icy roads. We even considered moving down south to a state that doesn't have icy roads like ours, but we didn't want to move away from family. It would have massively disrupted our lives and our jobs as well. I bought her a better snow tires and also some reusable anti-snow chains for a better grip to give her more confidence when she drives in the snow, despite the fact that she wouldn't drive during icy conditions, and I had to do most of the driving. 2 months ago, in March, the weather forecast icy road conditions. My wife wanted me to drop her off at work because she had an important meeting. I had to drive her car because we bought another car after the car accident, and she had a brand new snow tires and perfectly set up for the icy conditions. After we dropped off my son at his friend's house because school was cancelled that day, I drove my wife to work and dropped her off. On my way to work, I started hearing a cell phone ring and vibration coming from the back seat. I thought my wife forgot her phone and I wanted to call her. I pulled the SUV by the side of the road so I could find the phone and drive back to return the phone to my wife at her job. After I pulled over, I started searching for it and I found it at the passenger backseat pocket. I was confused for a moment because that was the phone she was using over a year ago before we both switched to a new phone plan. I couldn't understand why she still had it and why it was still active. The iPhone was thumbnail print and password protected. I knew the password to the phone, but I didn't attempt to unlock it because I wasn't suspecting any infidelity at the time. I was confused about why she had 2 cell phones and the phone was fully charged, so it wasn't like she forgot it there for over a year. I got back into the car and drove to work without thinking much about it. During the spring, we went to the park with my son and some of our friends and their kids as well. We were having fun and we all got hungry, and there was no real food there but ice cream and sweets. So my wife gave me her phone to order some dinner for us because we were tired and didn't want to make dinner when we returned home. We just wanted to eat something. She gave me her phone and I opened her browser, and there it was. Ashley Madison's website was opened. First, I thought it was just spam or pop-up, or she had a virus on her phone. So I immediately closed the browser. Realizing what I have done, I tried to go back and open the browser again. The username was filled, but the password required facial recognition. There was another option to unlock the password, and I knew the code because I set that up myself. I entered the code to her phone, so the password was filled in. I successfully logged into her Ashley Madison's account, and she obviously used a pseudonym. No pictures that showed her face, just her legs and a picture of her hair. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I quickly looked through her chat history, and it appeared that she was chatting with someone as recently as an hour ago while we were still at the water park. I wanted to confront her then, but were surrounded by friends and family. I was so shell-shocked and couldn't believe it. I couldn't stop reading the messages. The more I read, the angrier I got. I was so angry that I didn't care that the place was filled with people. I called her away from the kids and friends and confronted her. She was clearly taken aback that she had been exposed, but instead of confessing, she tried to downplay it. All of a sudden, she began to stutter and couldn't come up with a complete sentence. She claimed she was just using it for fun and to see people's reaction, and she wasn't really serious about meeting anybody there. I wasn't buying her story. I told her that I wanted to leave the park immediately. My son wanted to stay, but I insisted that we have to leave. While I was driving back home and my son in the back seat, I didn't want my son to witness us fighting. I couldn't wait till we get home so I can get some answers from her. As soon as we got home, we went into the bedroom and she was crying, saying that she was unhappy with our marriage and it was starting to feel dead. I told her why she didn't tell me about it. Instead, she went online to sleep with men. She responded that she hasn't slept with anybody on there. She said she has been chatting but hadn't slept with anyone. I took her phone and looked through her conversation on Ashley Madison. What I hadn't realized at the time is that she had already deleted a lot of her messages. She claimed that after her accident, she felt lonely and looking for who to talk to, and then she started searching online. She made me feel like I wasn't there for her, like I was difficult to talk to. Before this, I felt like our marriage was perfect. We almost never argue. I was open-minded and never the kind of person that is difficult to talk to, which is why I knew her story was total BS. My wife is an awful liar and kept insisting that she hadn't cheated physically, but she successfully used the story about her accident to make it seem like she started talking to men after the trauma she had from the accident. Like I wasn't there for her. I was beyond reproach that my wife was online looking for other men's approval because she claimed that I wasn't there for her. I suspected that she wasn't telling me the entire truth. The messages from most of the guys were just sexting. Most of them were trying to set up a meetup and she wouldn't respond. So we agreed that we should go to marriage counseling and figure out how we could work on our marriage. That night, I took screenshots of some of the messages before I gave her back her phone. The following day, she told me that she had deleted the Ashley Madison profile, which I confirmed myself. The following week, I went to work like any other day, but I couldn't concentrate. I felt like my wife wasn't telling me the entire story, but I didn't know what to do. Out of curiosity, I seek help online. I read about infidelity, and I found out other similar story as mine. I spent more time online and came across YouTube channels with infidelity stories. I started to binge watch those stories. That was the first time I heard about a burner phone. My mind immediately went back to my wife's old phone that she kept in her car. I then went back to the screenshots I had taken of the messages that my wife was having with multiple men, and I found out that she was using Ashley Madison as a funnel and would carry on conversation with another phone. She thought she was clever with her pathetic attempt to conceal her affair. She wouldn't give her real number, but instead would ask for the number of some of the men she was chatting with. in the Ashley Madison's website. I figured she was using a backup phone to call the man, and that's where my evidence were. Mind you, me and my wife have already set up an appointment with a marriage counselor the following day. That night, when my wife was asleep, I took her keys and went into her car to search for her phone. The phone was no longer in the back passenger pocket. My heart dropped. I thought she may have gotten rid of it. I searched underneath the seat and the glove compartment and couldn't find it. I searched everywhere around the car and it wasn't there. I was so disappointed. That was my only way to prove that she was lying. My wife is a terrible liar, and I knew that if I confront her without finding the phone and proof of her physical affair, she would continue to gaslight me. The following day, we went to the marriage therapist. We drove in the same car after work, and it was an opportunity for her to open up and tell me why she felt like I wasn't supportive of her and why she thought our marriage was starting to feel dead, so I could know what to do in order to fix it. During counseling, the conversation started with the story of her accident and the trauma that she has been through and how she needed emotional support. I was just sitting there waiting for her to tell me how I wasn't supportive of her and how I wasn't there for her. It was basically a cry feast of her trying to play the victim, and the marriage counselor was somehow supporting her and blaming me for what we agreed as an emotional affair. I felt like I was being interrogated, like I was the one that cheated. The therapist gave me some assignment on what I need to do to rebuild my relationship with my wife and to rekindle our relationship. I was sitting there like, what the F? I was not the one on a dating site looking for who to cheat with. I didn't reveal anything about her backup phone because I knew somehow they would try to blame me for that one as well. I mean, what a total mind F. I agreed to the marriage counseling, thinking she would confess and apologize and to take responsibility for her actions. Instead, she was made the victim, and I became the reason why she wanted to cheat. I understand that sometimes I can be emotionally disconnected, but nothing has changed in our lives, and I was the same person before and after the accident. And I felt like she was just using all kinds of excuses to deflect and not take responsibility of her actions. After we got out of the session, I felt like I was roughed up. It was almost like the therapist and my wife planned this whole thing. It was like I was facing a firing squad on both sides. I felt like I was the one that cheated, and that really messed me up. She showed no accountability of her actions and didn't reveal anything that I didn't already know. I promised myself that I would never go back to the marriage counseling again. That weekend, when my wife went out, I took the house apart, searching for her backup phone, and I couldn't find it. I concluded that maybe she was now hiding it at her work. At that time, I felt like she won and got away with cheating because things started to become normal, like all was forgotten. We worked on several bonding exercises and went places together in an effort to build back our marriage. But it left a bitter taste in my mouth because I knew that she may be deceiving me and she haven't come clean about the backup phone. I conceded to the fact that she may have thrown the backup phone away and that she have gotten away with having an affair. I posted my story to a forum and they advised me to hire a private investigator, but I thought I could do it myself. So I went to work that night and started doing some serious detective work. I logged into her email and went through everything with a fine comb. Went through bank records, her Instagram, and finally her Facebook Messenger. I went through every message she had from all the single guys that she has on there and came up with a few things that made me uncomfortable, like them calling her exy and beautiful. But I can live with that. I clicked one I hadn't really considered and found what I have always been terrified of. I found her talking to someone about how this other guy is so rough with her and she loves it. She tries to recruit him for a threesome, which he backed out of, but tries to convince her to do one-on-one. She then says, no thanks, you are too gentle. If I wanted that, I would just F my husband. I don't even know how to describe that feeling. I never truly felt anything heartbreaking, but in that moment, that was how I felt. I got home late. I didn't know what to do. I finally decided I was going to wake her up and confront her. I removed my wedding ring, sat in the bed, waiting for her to wake up, with my wedding ring in my closed fist. She woke up and looked confused as to what I was doing sitting there. I told her that we needed to talk and that I had something for her. She sat up all freaked out, concerned like something bad happened at work, or who knows what. I told her I knew she had excess with multiple men. And please don't call me stupid by denying it. I showed her the ring, that it meant nothing to her. She looked at my empty finger. She knew what that meant and started to cry and shake and said she didn't want it. She finally came clean about what had happened. I demanded to know how many times and how many people. She said one guy, 3 separate times. I lost it and said some pretty awful stuff and said I'm leaving and started to pack. She was crying and begging me to stay and she would do anything and she kept trying to stop me from leaving. I eventually got into my car and drove off. I was surprised that she was following me in her car, which I thought was dangerous and dramatic of her. I pulled a maneuver in a parking lot and got away from her. She started to text me over and over, begging me to come home. I didn't respond. I was just waiting for her to leave for work so I could go home and sleep. She texted me and said she was gone and to please come home. So I did and went to sleep. I was in bed for an hour. I woke up to her climbing into the bed with me. She hadn't left for work because she couldn't stop crying. More arguments, and I eventually made her to get out so I could sleep. Locked the bedroom door. Woke up to a lot of texts about how she hadn't seen anyone for months and that she would do anything to change. I packed my stuff up again and left for work. At this point, I'm going to thank anyone that's still bearing this giant wall of text, but I really need to get this out. I have nobody to talk to really. Now I'm driving towards work and have a couple of hours to kill. So I found an empty parking lot and turned off the car and started to cry like I've never cried in my life. What I thought was a great marriage was over as far as I was concerned. My wife, who's my best friend, has destroyed me. I sat and cried and started to really evaluate the situation. We were supposed to be leaving the next day to take my son and 2 friends away for 3 days for her birthday weekend, and my wife was begging me to please come for her. I decided to do it for my son and told my wife I would be home in the morning. I woke up one morning with a horrible image of me deleting myself that I couldn't shake. Never had that happen before, and it hasn't happened since, thank goodness. But it was terrifying how hopeless I felt in those moments. We got into a couple of arguments, which made me leave and go for a run to think. Then I caught her trying to hide things on her phone, which turns out to be innocent. But now my guards is up about everything. We had an argument, and the issue of her using her old phone was brought up. At first, she tried to deny that she still had her own phone on her, but later admitted that she left her backup phone at work. We got home, and while she was at work, I was making dinner and doing some chores I have been putting off. She came home and handed it to me and said to look at whatever you want, and I will see that it hasn't been used since she got her new one. I told her I am not stupid and that she have deleted any proof of an affair and can still use private browsing and send message on apps without a phone plan. I took a look at the phone and searched through the app, and it was obvious that her old phone has recently been factory unlocked to wipe all evidence of her affair. I told her that I've had it and she's making mockery of me. I can't handle this and I'm leaving. I packed up my stuff and took off. She started texting about how she was driving around and looking for me because we needed to talk. She just made me drove further and further. She eventually gave up and went home. I stopped responding to her texts and tried and failed to sleep in my car. I started to read this forum and sent her some things to read and learn. I told her I wanted to take an STD test, which to my surprise, she'd taken already and had the report to back it up. And I contacted a lawyer to learn about possible divorce issue I might face. I felt humiliated and smaller than I felt in my life. This sense of distraught and overwhelming crushing feeling I felt in my chest is genuinely awful. So I had a 1 week vacation, which I also used to go on a 1 week hunting trip with my friends because of so much stress. Before I left, I told her let's take care of that old iPhone she factory reset. She handed it to me. Little did she know that she had backed up her phone on iCloud before factory reset. She's genuinely terrible with technology, and I decided to snoop through it. She thought she had gotten rid of everything out of it, but like I said, I was going through it and finding all her pictures that were backed up and got her text messages folder Upon opening it, I found pictures of other guys' private parts and pictures of hers, and I took screenshots of different conversations detailing ex-war escapades, evidence that she's been on multiple dates to meet people, orgies, and threesomes. I quickly tried to save all the evidence on my portable hard drive so I can use it for eventual divorce. She answered all my questions that I asked her about everything, and I told her that I don't want to know the details. It'll be too hurtful. She had no idea she had already detailed her infidelity, and I now have it on my hard drive. Now I am on my 1 week hunting trip, which I told her would be a huge test of trust. I am seriously miserable away from her, but I am relieved that I know the truth. I still sometimes have crippling thoughts of her together with other men, and I'm trying different strategies to cope with this, but it's so hard to do. However, I know that as soon as I return from this trip, I have to move on. I will be filing for a divorce. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you for staying to the end of this story. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and put down your comments below and what you think about this story. Have a good day and God bless.